Good morning and welcome back for another training diary on what's looking like a very beautiful and very fun day ahead of us. Starting off today, I'm going to be just running Scandal through his test again and probably practicing some obstacles ahead of a competition tomorrow. Then I'm going to be very, very excitingly getting back on Dazzle. I've ridden him a couple of times, but for anyone who hasn't been kept up to date with him, it has been about 13 months of pretty much consistent groundwork with him since he came to us as an ex-racehorse straight off the track. And today, well, this week, I have got back on him finally, and I'll talk you through all the excitement on that front. Then Jimmy and Bella will be going for a hack. Bella's also going to the show tomorrow, so just a nice light day for her. And very excitingly as well, the second big update is Zen is off for a cross-country lesson with Tim Cheffings, and that's going to be his first time doing cross-country since he started his rehab. I'm really excited to see how he gets on, and as I'm sure you can tell, today is going to be quite a big day of reaching milestones for him and Dazzle, and I'm really pleased and looking forward to showing you guys how we've been getting on. Scandal came out in this session a little bit tense and distracted, which unfortunately has been a little bit of a pattern recently. You'll possibly have seen from my last video of the show that I had exactly that problem. And when I'm riding Scandal, the way I will deal with that in particular to try and help him soften and calm down is I'll ask very small, very specific, and very detailed little questions that I know he can answer. So, for example, I will work on his positioning. Here I'm asking a little quarters in the canter. I might ask a little shoulder in, some lateral movements, just very simple, basic stuff where I focus on being precise about how I position him and regulating his rhythm just to encourage him to come back to me. And here I was hoping to ask for a little flying change. It fell apart a little bit, and I was very intentional about not being bothered by it. It's fine. And then when I came back around, we got the change beautifully. And it's really key and not always that easy to not allow yourself to get worked up with them. It's certainly not something I manage to do all the time. But when I do manage to just keep myself calm and just focus on those little questions, I find that the horses respond so much better to that, and you start to get them really softening and finding that relaxation. It doesn't always work necessarily, but if you're really struggling, you then need to start looking at the causes of those tensions and those issues. Then once I feel he's in a happier place, I'll start upping the question that I'm asking him. And again, it all needs to be done in a very laid back way. But for example, I'll start introducing a bit more collected work. Here, just a lovely piaffe, and start just challenging him a little bit. And what I had been hoping to work on was obstacles and tests. I kind of threw that out the window, but I did want to work a little bit on the tempies because I knew they'd come up in the competition the following day. And that's sort of where I finished. And there we had some wobbling in his position, which meant that the second change was tight behind. But here, this line I thought was brilliant. And we even kept going with the tempies around the turn. So it was a nice outcome. Definitely he improved and settled and softened through the session. But I do think that there are some questions that I need to ask there about why he's just not entirely settled and not an entirely happy bunny at the moment. Right, little one, let's get going. You've got grass in your eye again. You're looking very well. Yeah, you have a good little morning. Was I just literally starting him off in hand? Yeah. Little bit of, good boy, little bit of move off the inside shoulder. Lovely. Sort of yield away. And I've not been doing much, I've just been doing enough to make sure that he's in a good, mindset. But I, wouldn't do much, I just, he's obviously in a good mindset, so I then pop on. With a young horse like Dazzle, all of my sessions are short, sweet, and simple. So I will be doing walk and trot with him. I'll be focusing on calm relaxation and a good mental state and responsiveness. And anytime I feel he's a little bit distracted, I won't try and like hold his attention or take his attention back to me. I will simply ask a little question that I know he can answer, but that will sort of encourage him to think back to me. And for these transitions that you'll see, it's really important that the horses understand what the leg aid means, what the rein aid means, but it's also really important that they don't rely on them as their main way of communicating with the rider. So for transitions, I will use a very little bit of leg or rein aid, but instead of escalating those aids when he doesn't respond, I'll make it harder for him to continue as he is. So if we take the downwards transition, I'll very gently ask a little bit of rein aid, but before that, I'll do seat, I'll do breath, and I'll do voice cue. And if he weren't to respond to the rein aid, which would follow all of that, I would then put him on a slightly smaller circle and ask him to yield, because that makes it harder for him to continue forward as he's going and encourages him to slow down and come back to a walk. And I find that works really nicely and it keeps them sensitive while helping them, still encouraging them to understand those aids. And what was so lovely about Dazzle is I wasn't even having to get to the point where I made it harder. He was simply responding to my seat, my voice, and my breath aids, which was so lovely. And, as I've said, it kept it all very short, very simple, and that was pretty much a 10-minute session.
Yeah, that's Dazzle. Pretty good. I mean, I know he looks like a youngster who's never been saddled before, but
he's obviously youngster who's never been schooled.
yeah.
But it's just that he's not, he's working with you, whereas
Yeah.
before he wasn't.
When he's listening, the fact that I can stop him off just a voice cue and a bit of body aid. I'm not using my reins, he's just stopping.
Yes, look,
he never would have heard that.
He stood quietly there,
Yeah.
rather than rampaging about.
Yeah. He never would have heard any of those cues though. He would have been so.
Before, no.
He couldn't hear it.
No, because he only heard loud stuff.
Yeah. So good stuff, huh? Very good stuff, I think. So I appreciate not everyone is going to know what has happened with Dazzle. Basically, he came to us straight off the track. He was very shut down and couldn't really hear any of my cues. Very spaced out, never really zoned in to what I was saying to him. So I spent 2025 basically trying to bring him out of his shell. And that did work. He became much more engaged and happy and part of the team. But it kind of then developed into tension. And he became quite hyper vigilant. So that's been the main challenge we faced this year. I got on him briefly after the new year, thinking we were ready to get on board and go riding. And then I just decided that actually he, again, couldn't really hear what I was saying. He was so busy feeling stressed in himself that my aids and stuff weren't really going through to him. So I got back off and I spent the last few months and pretty much most of my training diaries doing groundwork, trying to get him to listen, be able to listen to me a bit more attuned with me, and generally trying to get him to settle and focus. We have also done a bit of body work with him, which I think has been incredible and really helped release that tension. And finally, I felt it might as well. There was no time like the present to get back on board. And that's what I've been doing this week. And yeah, he feels amazing. He honestly is feeling like a different horse. He still obviously is and looks like a horse who's got zero schooling. But the fact is, I could stop him there off my body language. He was pretty responsive to the leg. He was mostly, again, listening and happy, and the mouth tension, which has been a real issue, is, again, a lot better. So I'm really thrilled with how he's doing. And yeah, I'm hoping this has sort of turned a new leaf, and fingers crossed he's now ready to kind of step into the next stage of his training.
Sunbathing. Thank you. Nose in knackers. Nose in here. Very good. I know.
Dressage, very excitingly, has been given the go-ahead to get his feet dirty and start doing proper, like, just cracking on. So very excitingly, he is entered for Solihull next weekend for the BE there. But it does mean this is his first outing and we're in a bit of a time crunch, so I'm hoping it goes well. It kind of needs to go well. If it doesn't, it's fine, we'll deal with it. But, I mean, I imagine it will, not that I know what's going to happen. It's also absolutely boiling, in case you can't tell from how red I am.
Look at my little baby. We obviously started off super duper small because I had absolutely no idea. None of us really knew quite how he was going to come out. He isn't actually that experienced. He only did a couple of events before he started his rehab. So we just wanted to make sure and not jump in too deep. But like, oh, he was just perfect. And what was really interesting was how much more powerful he was, and as a result, how I wasn't really keeping in like rhythm with him, and I was slightly tending to run him in deep because I just, as you can see there, he just feels so different. Like, it's crazy the difference in him. So yeah, there was a lot of cobwebs to be brushed off. And we brought him towards the ditch. He was a little bit green on us, but in the scheme of things, not too bad. But it did show up a little bit more as we tried to sort of shift him towards the bigger ditch. Tim made a very good point that if Zen asks or offers to go into canter instead of trot, just to go with him, because if I then ask him to come back to a trot, it's a very conflicting message where he's saying I want to go forward and I'm saying no, stay. Yeah, so the other thing that really picked up on is that he is keener on a more open shot. He would prefer to take that, so that's something for me to consider going forward. And it's quite different to Jimmy and Bella, who Jimmy would choose a deeper shot, whereas Bella would rather I just sort of wait and let her take the shot she gets. So yeah, it's just an interesting one, and there's some rust to be dusted off there. Now, what caught me a bit off guard was that he went a little bit green at these steps, and I think there's a couple of possible reasons for this. I'd actually forgotten that Zen has a history of not being entirely confident with changes in ground, so where it changes colour or surface. And you can just see here he lost a little bit of confidence in what he was doing, but that was fine. We just ended up breaking it completely down for him, just doing the little house and then working back up to the full combination. So yeah, changing ground, definitely a factor in my opinion. The other small possibility is that with the injuries he had before rehab, so particularly the kissing spines and the SI injury, it's possible that those dropping down steps has been uncomfortable for him in the past and quite jarring on those injury points. So I'm just going to need to rebuild confidence in him that that's not going to be painful. I don't know for sure if that's the case, it's just a thought. So anyway, we broke it right down for him, built his confidence up, popped it back up the other direction, so he really started to feel like he knew what was going on. And then we brought him back round once more, just to do the whole thing backwards, and he was a lot happier. I think one thing that I've been really dwelling on in the last few days has been not hassling horses on a cross-country course. And I think I'm possibly in a current tendency to do so. So to try and rush them through things instead of giving them the space to think and have time. So that's just something I'm playing with and something that I will be considering over the next few weeks anyway. But he's really looking really lovely and bold and happy and kind of up for it and pleased to be back. There's just obviously a few things that now that we've got back out on the course, we just need to get a bit more practice in and get a bit more together as a partnership again. He is also still favouring that landing on that right lead. You'll see through this combination, he's just choosing to land right. Again, he's not had so very many sessions to work on it since then, so that's something we're continuing to work on, but it will just take time. But I mean, it's so cool how bold he is here, and look at him just hopping into the water, and it's a fantastic starting point. I'm thrilled.
Lovely, very good, super bold.
Yeah, he's really cool. I am very, very thrilled with how that went. We obviously had our little moment of inexperience, I will call it, at the steps, but otherwise, I mean, I couldn't have asked for more. He came out like a pro, which is awesome, and it was nice how much more mature he was. So yeah, really pleased and looking forward to taking him out eventing. It's going to be a big one. Hi, sweetie pie. Had a nice day in the field. Right, I'm going to sign off there. It has been a very lovely day, but I've now got to get Scandal ready for the show tomorrow. Yeah, it's just really nice to be hitting those milestones, and I hope you can see how well all the horses are doing. I could not be more pleased. Obviously, it's never going to be smooth sailing going forward, but it's nice that we have got to these points. Anyway, I better get cracking, and I think actually the show video will be out before this video, so it's kind of backwards, but I will see you, I believe, in a eventing vlog next week.